Welcome to Homeschooling with Confidence. Let me switch my slide there. I'm excited to share with you some things that I've learned about how you can homeschool and actually feel like you're confident about it, instead of letting every bad day kind of get under your skin or every obnoxious comment from well-meaning people get under your skin. Instead, you can feel very confident that we're not perfect, but we're doing what we want to do, and we're doing it the way that works for our family. Let me introduce myself. I'm Shelly. This is my littlest one. They're imitating what I do all day, it seems, working on the computer on various projects and homeschool things. I love learning. I love school. I love being on the computer learning, unfortunately / fortunately maybe. I love my kids, and homeschooling them has been such a joy, but it has been quite a journey. Confidence hasn't always been something that I had in my homeschool. I started out that way, but due to a lot of different issues and some true mental health issues that run in my family, I've had true anxiety. So to develop true confidence has been a journey for me. And what I'm here to share with you today comes from a book called The Confidence Gap by Russ Harris. And a lot of it also comes from a book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Two books that I would highly recommend reading. They have helped me a lot in many areas of my life, including homeschool. So just to begin, let me ask you a question. What would your homeschool look like if you had enough confidence? And I want you to just take a moment and write this down. What would your homeschool look like if you had enough confidence? How would you answer that question? Okay, that's not a lot of time, but you can pause if you want to keep thinking. There are 6 main reasons that we don't have confidence. The first 5 come from Russ Harris's book. We have excessive expectations, harsh self-judgment, preoccupation with fear, lack of experience, or lack of skill. I don't know about you, but every new homeschooling mother I've ever spoken with has one of all of those 5, if not all 5. We have these really high expectations for ourselves that we will be able to learn every subject, or that we should know every subject, and we will have every class at every stage for our children, and we just have these expectations of what it should look like that are too high and not realistic. And that doesn't mean you'll sell yourself short or your children. It just means that you don't understand what it needs to look like. Harsh self-judgment. You're too hard on yourself. You think you're too stupid or too dumb to do this, which isn't true. If you graduated from high school, surely you can teach what you learned. Preoccupation with fear. We move an awful lot in fear in the homeschool world. We move an awful lot in fear in our parenting in this day and age. I want you to think about how many times you act out of fear. Are you afraid they won't pass the test? Afraid they won't get into college? Afraid they won't have any friends? Afraid of? Are you pulling them out of school because you're afraid of things? That doesn't lead to confidence. It leads to fear. Lack of experience. If you haven't been a homeschool mom before, you're scared. And even if you've been a public school teacher, that isn't the same thing. And so even if you have a degree in education, you haven't homeschooled kids in a house all day while trying to do laundry and feed a baby and make breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you probably don't have a lot of experience. And you probably didn't see your mom do it. And then lack of skill. You just haven't practiced the skills. Now the 6th reason that we often lack confidence is that we don't have our own why. And we're going to talk about what I really mean by a why. It comes from Simon Sinek's book as we go through this discussion. So I want you to think about when you learned to ride a bike. How old were you? How easy was it? How long did it take? Did you just get on and start riding? And then pretty soon you were just riding around the block and soaring with no problem? Or did you fall over a lot? Did you get frustrated? Did you take a day off? Did you have some bumps and bruises and some scrapes and some bleeding even? Did you cry? Confidence is not necessarily the ability to hop on the bike and just go. Often we think of that first, the feeling of certainty or assurance. I can just get on that bike and go. Most of us now can hop on a bike and confidently ride a bike, and we don't even think about it. But we had to start somewhere, and we started with trust that we could learn to ride a bike. And we probably relied on someone like a parent or a sibling to teach us how. The word confidence actually comes from the Latin for com and fidere, with and to trust. It makes sense, we know that, but we can act in confidence if we trust that the result will eventually come. Getting on a bike and riding without even thinking about it came after you did all this other work. Getting up in the morning and getting through a homeschool day without really thinking about it, which will happen, comes after you act in faith and you trust that you can do it. One of the biggest myths in the world of confidence, if you will, is the myth that you have to feel confident before you can achieve your goals, perform at your peak, or do the things that you want to do. That's not true. There's a gap between this act of trust and this feeling of certainty or assurance, and we can cross that gap. We can bridge that gap. It's kind of, some days it feels like this huge canyon, and you're standing on one side and you want to get to the other. But I'm going to teach you a few things that can help you make a bridge across this canyon, that can help you bridge this gap. Nelson Mandela is quoted quite a bit in The Confidence Gap by Russ Harris. And he is someone that I think we all genuinely admire for how much he did for the country of South Africa. When he was first put into jail for his beliefs on apartheid, he said, people asked him, were you afraid? And his answer was, of course I'm afraid. Do I think I can take on the entire world? But in front of the guards, he acted confident anyway, because he knew all the other prisoners were watching him. And he knew the world was watching, in a sense, as well. And he said after a while of acting confident, he instilled confidence in those around him, and he gained his own confidence. Enough confidence that while he was in prison, he was able to obtain a law degree. He was able to learn from the guards and understand their point of view. And he didn't even waste that time. He used that time to continue to prepare for what he needed to do when he got out of prison many, many years later. So, the first thing to do in order to bridge this gap is start with why. Why are you doing this? Why are you bringing your kids home from school? Why do you want to do this? This decision will drive everything else that you do. When I get calls from homeschool moms, they want to know about curriculum. They want to know about schedules and books and worksheets and what are the requirements and how will I know if they're meeting the standards and should I give them tests and which tests do you take. But nobody ever tells me why. Except maybe, oh, I want to spend some more time with them, or I don't like what they're learning on the playground. Very few moms call with a really certain why that they can verbalize. They might have it, but it's difficult to verbalize. And it is difficult to verbalize because the feelings that we have don't necessarily reside in the same part of our brain as our language. And Simon Sinek talks about that in his book quite a bit. It just feels right is often our answer. But we need to spend some time being able to verbalize it for ourselves so that we know why we're doing it, so that our spouse and our children know why this is so important that we're going to make these sacrifices. You'll know you've found your why when you get passionate and when it starts to come out in you. Okay? My why makes me get, and if you challenge my why with me, you'll probably get quite a tirade of, well, what about this and what about that? And no, you need to understand, and you will feel my passion. Not necessarily my disagreement with you, but my passion come out. That this is why I'm doing this. And in order to find a why, you got to read and you got to think and you got to ponder and pray. It's not easy to find. You need to start by reading about education and reading about what you do and don't want. The more you read and study education itself and what an education even is, the more you will form your own why. This is just me, but I personally don't think that not wanting your kids to learn to swear words on the playground will be sufficient for you to keep them home for the next 12 years with all that comes with homeschooling. It's just too challenging. That's not a very strong why. You need more than that. Okay? The other reason you need more than that, and the other reason I encourage you to look at homeschooling or educational philosophy, is because homeschooling doesn't look like public school. You're not in a school, you're in a home, and that is good. It has its own advantages, but it does have some disadvantages, if you will, and it's definitely got differences. And trying to run a little public school inside of your home will stress you out faster than any other form of education in the home I've ever seen. So start with, why am I doing this? What do I believe in education is? Ask those questions of yourself. Whether you ever bring your kids home or not, you need to have an answer to the question, what is an education for? Why am I sending my kids to school 8 hours a day? Why am I teaching them at home? Why? What's an education for? Once you know your why, it's the golden circle, as Simon calls it, then you can determine how you're going to go about educating your children. Whether the public schools will meet your why, whether you need a charter school at home, whether you want to be completely on your own, whether you want to unschool or do some Charlotte Mason or some TJ Ed or a combination of all three. How will come from your why. And then what you do each day, what books you buy, will come from your why and your how. Let me give you an example. If my why for education is that I believe that education is to prepare my children to fulfill their missions in life, the how will be driven by that. I will choose curriculum that I believe prepares them. I believe the classics prepare them to understand history so we don't repeat history, and prepare them to be better leaders. So what books will I buy? Classics. What curriculum will I never use? A socialist textbook that I don't like. It'll be really easy to weed it out. And if you're not sure on your why, sometimes your what can kind of help you. If you can say, I don't like those books, I like these. You can see what you're continuously drawn to. It might help you verbalize things a little better. But your why drives your how and your what. Let me give you another example from the book, Start With Why. It's called the Celery Test. In the celery test, he explains, he's talking to businesses, but he shares this example, and it will make it really clear for you. He says that if you're at a party and another man comes up to you and says, you know, in your business, you really need to use M&Ms. If you're not using M&Ms, it's just not going to work. And then another person says it's celery, it's all about celery. Another one says it's almond milk, you really need to have almond milk in your company. And another says Oreos. We implemented Oreos and things are going awesome in our company. Well, if you go to the store and you get all of them, you're not sure which Oreos, and you try them all, and you have all this stuff in your cart, and you're not sure who you are, and no one else is either. You know, we've all seen those shopping carts where people have like the healthy food and the not healthy food, and you kind of laugh. Or the carts where you're looking at them as they unload, and you're thinking, man, everything on there is prepackaged. And you don't try to judge. It's just that what the person's doing makes it obvious about their why as far as food. They're probably busy, or they don't know how to cook, or they don't like to cook. Okay? We do the same thing. Our what gives away our why. So if you take this celery example, and I tell you that you believe in eating foods that are healthy and will nourish your body, then I don't even have to tell you what foods you're going to go buy at the store, do I? You'll pick up the celery and maybe the almond milk. It's a very clear way of making decisions. It weeds everything else out. And if you're standing there in the grocery store with celery and almond milk in your cart and that's it, people know, oh, that's a healthy person. They might ask you a question. They might want to know what you know. But if you've got all kinds of stuff in your cart, they won't. So your why is really important to differentiate for yourself and for others around you. And your children will be very confused if you're jumping all over the place. Not from curriculum to curriculum per se, but if they don't know, like, well, are we classics, or are we this, are we unschool, are we that, they need to know too. And they need to understand, and they should have some input into it, especially if they're older, on why they're doing this. And then you can help them see why it's going to be so different from what they've done before, possibly. if they understand the change and what they're shooting for as a family. Another way to talk about the how is your values. I talked about this a bit already, but know your spouse's values and know your child's values. Okay? If your spouse really values the fact that your child learned to stand up for themselves, and that's the real reason they're wanting them to go to public school, can you address his needs for your child to learn to stand up for themselves and your needs for a different form of education? I believe you can. But if he just keeps saying, no, they have to go to public school, and you keep saying, no, they need to come home, you're going to always be at an impasse. But if you can know each other's values and talk about them that way, you can compromise. There are values tests and all kinds of things out there you can find online. I'll try to find one and post it with this recording for you. But one you can do is called a values mind reading, where you could have your spouse do this about a child, and you could also do it about a child. You pretend that you're able to read the mind of someone in your family. You pretend you can read the mind of someone you work with. You pretend you can read the mind of someone that you interact with in kind of a relaxed hobby or friendly way, if you will, a good friend. And what you do with that is you pretend you can read their mind and that they're thinking about you. And as they're thinking about you, what would you want them to say about you? Not your accomplishments, but about your character. Would you want them to say, Shelley Nash, oh yeah, Shelley Nash, she's always on time, she's so efficient, she's so thorough, very smart. What would you want them to be saying? Not what do you think they're saying about you. This isn't a disparaging time, but what would you want them to say? And as you do that for those three areas, you will start to see similarities, and you will find the things that you value. And you can do the same for your children. You can have your spouse pick three people, their teacher, their grandparents, their a church leader, or, the Lord, whatever. What would you want them to say about your child Joshua? And you do it. What would you want those people to be saying about your child Joshua if you could read their brains? And then compare. And you will see where you have some overlap, which you probably have many, many things that overlap, and maybe some significant differences to discuss. It's really insightful. It's kind of hard to do. I mean, it's simple to do, but it's a lot of thinking. Makes for an interesting date with your spouse. Okay? Do it with some ice cream or some chocolate or something fun. But know your values, and then discuss that for each child, and understand how your child likes to learn and how your child values and what they want to do in certain things, because your curriculum choices will also be driven by whether they're a hands-on kid or a sit-down and study kid. What do they value? What do they like to do? What do they think their mission is in life? Not just you. This is their education, not yours. Believe it or not, we can only assist and help. We can't force our kids to learn anything. If you've tried, you should know what I mean. Okay, so understand values. And again, that mind reading machine is a great way to do it. And then the what will be driven by all of that. And we talked about that. Let's talk now about three specific things that kind of fall into the category of what that will help you as a homeschooler. So kind of back to the confidence. This is the confidence cycle from Russ Harris's book, The Confidence Gap. And it shouldn't look very different to you or very new. You should look at that and think, yeah, I've done that a million times before, because you probably have. If you want to learn a new skill, you practice it, apply it effectively, assess the results, and modify it as needed. Okay, you've all done that. With homeschool, it's the same thing. You can do this on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a yearly basis. You can do it with just math. You can do it with anything at all. I'm going to practice teaching my children math. Or I'm going to practice running my household. I'm going to practice doing this. Or for your children, I'm going to practice running my own schedule today. Okay, if you just brought them home and they've been told where to be, at what time, every moment of the day, 6 hours a day, and then you throw them in their room and say, okay, manage your day. Come out at 3 o'clock and show me everything you've done. That's going to be kind of hard. All right? Help them, teach them, let them practice, help them apply it, assess how they're doing, modify, try again tomorrow. This is the same thing that you can do with your kids and yourself. to be comfortable as a homeschooling mom. At the end of the year, you might go, okay, we practiced all year. We did this effectively, that not. How did we do here? How did we do there? Next year, I think we need to switch out our history. It just didn't work. Or it worked for all of them except Jonathan. Whatever. Don't beat yourself up because you need to modify. We never stop and hit perfection on very many things in this life. So you're going to continue through this cycle over and over and over again. And as you do it more and more and more, it becomes like riding a bike, and you become more and more confident. And sometimes you simply become more and more confident that you can modify and figure it out. Not that you'll ever get it done, but that you can modify it and figure it out quickly. You get some resources, friends, networks, and things that help you. And you know that when you run into a bump in the road, you'll be able to go through this cycle and you'll be able to work it out super quick. And so don't get hung up on that, oh, I can get this all figured out, and quit figuring it out. It does become more routine, but you're never done. You know, it's like having your first baby. It's so overwhelming, but by the time you've had your fourth or fifth, you look back and think, what was so hard about having one? Kind of the same idea. You get your routines, you become comfortable with enough of it that you can handle bumps in the road now, and they don't seem so big. Homeschool will be the same way. You'll look back and think, what was so hard about that? You'll know, but you'll realize that it's not so hard anymore, and you can do it. The next aspect of what that's really been interesting for me is this chart here. We often focus up here at the top on this homeschool, and we have classes and whole conferences on it. But your homeschool is not going to be effective until you've taken care of all these other things. The foundation is your personal core, your personal spirit and health and physical well-being. Because if you're in a bad place, everything else is going to stink. I'm sorry, it just is. You need to take care of yourself. You've all heard that before. You don't have to throw everything out the window, but make time for yourself. Read, study, take care of your spirit, take care of your body, and then you'll be in a place where you can take care of your marriage. If your marriage is okay, then you're a better parent. And your parenting skills, that's significant. Here's why. If you haven't brought your kids home yet, or maybe you just have and you feel like, oh my goodness, this is awful, they're fighting all the time, your kids aren't used to being with each other all day, every day. That's why a lot of mothers don't care for summer. They have to get used to it. And I believe that every issue in a family, when you start to homeschool, I think it's amplified. Or maybe not so much amplified as just you can't ignore it anymore. You don't have a 6 to 7 hour break every day where you don't have to deal with it. You have to deal with the fact that those two siblings will not get along. And you were dealing with it before, but it becomes more immediate because nothing else can go forward. And that's a mixed blessing. Sometimes it's really frustrating, but other times it forces you to deal with issues that you might not get to painful enough to deal with and to really resolve. So focusing on your parenting skills, improving them, working on obedience with your children and their abilities. It says parenting skills, but it really ought to say parenting, and your children need to learn good habits as well. This is a two-way street. It's not all mom and dad's fault, okay? But if they won't even be obedient, then they're not going to get any homeschooling done either, and you know that, and that's probably why some of you are worried. And it's okay to spend 6 months to a year working on parenting skills. That's critical. If we're honest with ourselves, do we want children who share our values and are good people but are dumb? Or do we want brilliant people who are evil? If we had to choose, which we don't, but if we had to choose, we would choose those who share our values, who are good, honest, responsible, hardworking, whatever your values are, people. So remember that that is important, if not more important than whether they can finish calculus. So don't let them off the hook if they're being rude to their brother all day long because they need to go do their calculus. No, fix the parenting and the family issues first. You say they're more important, make them more important. Okay, and then home systems is the household stuff, the cleaning, laundry, food, all that stuff. It's very difficult to do homeschool when the house is a disaster. It's hard on the marriage if the husband prefers a clean home and he comes home and all of a sudden you haven't had 6 hours a day to clean by yourself, and so the house is a wreck and the laundry's never caught up and he doesn't have a clean shirt to wear. But hey, you're homeschooling. It's going to be hard for him to be supportive. On the website, monarchwebwork.com/confidence, you'll see resources for all the areas of this pyramid that I love. Of course, they're driven by my values and what I prefer, so take that for what it's worth, but find things that help you in these areas. There should be some listed below this recording as well. I encourage you to really be honest with yourself, and it's okay to take months to a year of your kids being home and show them this and tell them we're going to work on it as a family, because these things need to be in place. But once you do, I can't say I promise you, but when these things are in place and you've given them the attention they deserve, not only does the homeschool turn out better, but just everything is better. And then homeschooling becomes joyful and you would never go back. And neither would your kids, because they like their siblings, they like their freedom, they're learning things they want to learn. And it's just, you'll think, wow, I'm so glad I had to deal with all of this. This is awesome. And your kids will be much better prepared. That's my little plug for it. It really is worth all of this stress to homeschool. Now here's the other part. It's a what. What is success anyway? Let me tell you a little metaphorical story here. You can see this mountain climber. Imagine two mountain climbers climbing up a mountain trying to hit the peak. And one of the mountain climbers is just concerned about bagging as many peaks as he can that summer. He doesn't care where he's at. He doesn't care what it looks like. He doesn't care. He just wants to get to the top and get down and be able to say he summited and he can mark it off his list. The other mountain climber would like to hit as many peaks as he can as well. However, he's decided that he likes to do it. He does it because he enjoys being outside. He enjoys seeing the countries where he's traveling. He enjoys meeting the people. He enjoys the actual hiking itself, and he enjoys the companions he's hiking with. So we have these two hikers. They're hiking up the mountain. They're about 2/3 of the way up the mountain and a big storm hits and there's no way they can make it to the top. And there's no more time left to stay in the country. They have to leave. They've used up their options. The hiker who's only worried about hitting the top of the mountain is going to be pretty ticked. Frustrated, disappointed, whatever. The hiker who wanted to get to the top of the mountain, but also enjoys the journey and the travels and the people, yeah, they might be disappointed, but will the depth of their disappointment and frustration be as deep? I would say probably not. They are going to be okay. So what's the difference between the two? Which one would say that their trip was a success? Maybe neither one. In our world, we define success as meeting our goals. That's usually how we think of it. What is success? Meeting our goals. In the confidence gap, Russ Harris defines success as living by your values. Think about that for a minute. Living by your values. If the hiker who valued all the other parts of the experience wanted to define it as a success, they totally could. It was a successful trip. They got to see another country. They got to hike a mountain. They made new friends. They experienced a new culture. And because they lived in accordance with those values, it was a successful mountain climb. If all we focus on is reaching certain goals, there's 3 problems with that. Sometimes the goals are too long range. Sometimes the goals are out of our reach or out of our control, and we can't make them happen all the time. And then, even if we meet the goal or we summit the mountain, there's a tremendous amount of pressure to set another goal and reach that one too. And if we don't make that goal, then we're suddenly a failure. Think about the implications for this and what you wrote about. What's a successful homeschool? If you wrote something down and you wrote down, you know, how if I were confident my homeschool would look like this. Are they values you wrote down or goals? If they're things, if it's, well, my children will know all their math, that's not in your control. It might be too long range. And then what? Think about your values. You can live by your values every day. Here's an example. My son Caleb didn't learn to read until he was 9 years old, almost 10. We took 2 years of therapy to get to that point. I could say he was a failure because he was so behind and it took so long and it was so hard. But he's not a failure. He's a success because he was persistent and he kept going and he worked hard. And we valued his ability to reach that challenge far more than we valued his ability to read at a certain age. That's the difference, and your kids will feel it. Let go of the standards and measurements and benchmarks that some other person somewhere put down arbitrarily that should be earned at every grade. They are stressing you and your children. Live by your values, and you will hit all those benchmarks at some point, almost without fail. But relax and live your values. I believe that wholeheartedly. You're welcome to disagree with me, but I believe that wholeheartedly. It takes the pressure off of you and your children. You can't control your kids. And trying to set a goal of our homeschool will be successful if our kids all get into college, well, that's not going to keep you going when you have a really rotten Tuesday. But knowing that today, even if we only accomplished 5 multiplication problems and a story, we were kind to one another, we did our best, we took care of our home, we were polite, we served a neighbor, we dealt with a sick baby in a patient way, whatever came up, then today was a success. I hope you understand, at least for me, what an impact this can have on your life in every area, to lift the pressure that we put on ourselves too often, as moms especially. It also helps when dad wants to know if the school's being successful. Is this working? Remind him, what do you mean by is this working? We're living by our values and we're doing the best we can each day. Getting dad and mom on the same page with this definition is really, really important. So just my last little thought for you. I've helped a lot of moms. If I can do this, you can do this. You can get on the bike, you can fall over and get back on, and you can do this. It's not rocket science. You were given these children for a reason. You've been given these feelings about homeschooling for a reason. You'll have the resources and the help that you need, and your children will as well, and you'll summit the mountain at some point. And as you enjoy the journey, by the time you get to the top of the mountain, you'll look back and wish you could do it all over again. You'll realize the journey was the fun part, and that you have grown to love your children in ways you never thought you could. And you will know them so well because you're with them. You're their teacher. You're the one who helps them find what they need and gets them access to the resources that they need. One last thing, monarchwebwork.com has been created to help you do this. It's not a class. It's a set of resources that we know would have helped us when we were starting out as a homeschool parent to find our why, to figure out math, to have a group of people who were like-minded that we could go to. I hope you'll check it out, and I encourage you to use the resources if you're already there. Try everything a little bit, see what works for you, just like anything else. We look forward to you and look forward to your success in homeschool. Thank you.